Hello fellow Tanglers, welcome to Tangle Time YouTube version. This is my second video, and I had some thoughts after the first one. The first one I basically replicated what I did on the Tangle Time session they did online, and then I was rethinking about things and thought, well, gosh, if I'm doing more than one tangle, it might be good to just separate them. I don't know, would love to hear from you in the comments. You know, either way, that would be fantastic. So we're going to give this a go. So the first tangle, so this will be a series of two. So this tangle, we're going to explore, and I'm going to explore a little bit further than when I did it on Tangle Time, because there's some other ideas that I kind of have with this. I'm going to put in my four corners as per usual, and a nice little border. I am, by the way, I'm just using some cardstock in the shape of a tile, just so you know. Oh, and yeah, and I'm gonna make, and you can tangle along with me. I think that's kind of what I was thinking in the first place, was that you could tangle along with me versus, you know, some videos they speed up, slow down. We're gonna draw an X, so I'm gonna try to talk and tangle at the same time, which is always a challenge. So four corners, border. I'm going to use an X essentially as a string, because I have come up with 4 different ways to have fun with the Tangle Knightsbridge. Now, if you're not familiar with Knightsbridge, it is a super easy tangle. I'll put well, I'll have a simple step out. Maybe I'll add step outs if I can. In the comment section. It will be on my website, tangleaddicts.com, also. So, starting with one section, we're just going to do Knightsbridge regular. And so, regular is just drawing a grid, and I like to start my grids in the middle and work my way down. Okay, this one I'm doing a little bit narrow. That's alright. It's like, whichever way you start, you just kind of keep going with it. And because, as we know, there's no such thing as a mistake in Zentangle. So I like to start from the middle, work my way to either side, and then the same thing going the other direction, you know, in the middle, or kind of. I'm not going to put this one directly in the middle. But then I do try my very best to make squares, because you can kind of see when you put your pen down initially, you can kind of see, okay, is that going to be a square or is it going to be a rectangle? And for this tangle, I do my best, but you know what? It still, if you end up with more rectangles, it's okay. It does not matter. It will turn out gorgeous no matter what. So this one we are doing straight, and let's see, I'm going to pull out, I was using an 01 micron in black. I'm pulling out my 08, and I'm going to start coloring in every other square. Now what I do here, where it comes to the string line, is so a lot of times I will, and I didn't do it this time, but a lot of times I will outline it first, you know, these edges, and then come back. I'm almost debating. Oh, I'm getting to thicker ones here. I kind of reserve using a thicker nib to larger areas. That one was, it was just verging on I should have used the 01. Because the one thing that I don't want to do is, I don't know what the right word is, change what I have here, essentially. You know, like here, well, I've gone over, but you know, that's kind of okay, because we can just change out that border just a little bit. As I mentioned, there are no mistakes in Zentangle. There are only course corrections, just as in life. You know, we get what we get, and there's no do-overs. So that's why in Zentangle kits that you'll get, you will not find an eraser. In fact, you will not find a ruler, and it's because art imitates life, In that, I mean, well, there are rules, but some of them we have to kind of learn as we go. And again, nothing is perfect. So I'm gonna try to keep this inside here. So one of the best times, for course corrections is when you're filling in. So I like to, I don't know why, sometimes I just kind of go wild with the pen. And that's why I try to, I try to consistently, it doesn't always happen. I try to, like I'm doing here, I outline, the inside of where I'm coloring in first. Again, because technically I could have just drawn all of the lines with this pen. It still would have been fine. And maybe it is just me, but there is just something different in using the fine line first versus using the thick line. It's probably just me. So feel free to use a thick pen. And actually, it's one of those things too where why not just give it a go and see. And it seems like I have done that before, and I didn't care for the result or something, and hence I start off with the thin and use the thicker to color in. I feel like I should have some music playing in the background or something, but I'm hoping that you are tangling right along with me, and maybe you have some music on in your background, because it is hard. It's like I'm going, okay, how long is this going to take me to fill this in? And it's going to be boring, but at the same time, if my concept here is to have something that you can tangle along with, then it is what it is, right? Like I said, you watch some videos and they do editing and whatnot to speed up the boring parts, and well, let's see, there's repetitive parts in Zentangle, and really the repetition is what helps us to find that meditative state, or the mindfulness part of utilizing Zentangle. And honestly, even with somebody yapping in your ear, as I like to say, me, or like I get together with friends and we'll Zentangle. And even when I was doing in-person classes, when we were allowed to, I would do some evening classes, and it was so odd that even teaching a class, being on my feet for a good couple hours, depending on the class, it was amazing. It seemed like I would sleep so much better than normal, just because of the tangling aspect of it. Now, too, feel free to turn your tile. That's one of the things we do in Zentangle, for those that are not completely familiar. And I'm going to speak to those that are not necessarily familiar, and if you are, then this is just a refresher. But it's good to turn the tile. It's nice to have your hand in a nice comfortable position, so that way you're not having to move your hand all over the place. Oops, I see I might save that and do that little corner there with the 01. See, look at they're getting wild again with the pen. Going over my lines. But this tangle is nice because, and every once in a while I'll take a minute. I have a bad habit of clenching onto my pen. And if you do the same, it's a good idea to just take a minute every so often. Take a nice breath. We're supposed to remember to breathe while we're tangling. And heck, even look across the room. Focus your eyes on something else for a second or two, and then come back. Don't want anyone having to go get a new prescription due to tangling. Yeah, but it does work a lot better if I just do that outline and then color in the middle, and then the likelihood of me going outside is less. And I'm coming to the last bit here. So this is a nice tangle. It, you know, it reminds you of like a floor pattern from, say, the 50s or something, especially in the black and white. It's a fun tangle. It adds a nice amount of drama or contrast to your overall tangle pattern. So incorporating this tangle in something else, it's nice, because when I'm thinking about tangling, a lot of times, number one, I like to have, I don't know if theme is the right word, but I guess it is. I like to have things that kind of coordinate in a certain way, whatever I have going on in my mind. And don't say, even if someone will come up a little bit, there's just nothing you can do, and it's okay. We could, you know, maybe fix something in shading as well. And some days it is hard to tangle and to talk at the same time. Okay, I'm gonna get daring here. I'll do it with this pen, and it'll be okay. Yeah. You know what? Here's what I'm thinking, just because I'm noticing right there, and this is me being a bit anal. So when I colored this part in, and this is probably why I choose to not use the thicker pen for doing the lines, just that little corner. So this little corner, it was a lot more rounded than I wanted, because it's just the natural thing that happens when you use the thick pen. But you can, you know, for the most part, get most of your work done, the coloring in, and then come back with that fine line, and you know, take a look at those little places and just touch them up before you move on. So like right here, even, because I just want that to come up to as much of a point as possible. So there we have traditional Knightsbridge, just straight. I mean, it looks like a checkerboard, right? Checkerboard or chessboard. And then also, you know what, as you're going and kind of peeking, so see right here, I have this little teeny space where that would have gone. And actually, because my I'll extend that out just a little bit, because my my border is a little bit strange there. But there. Alright, so I'm always checking for those little things. I think it's a lot more, and I think I mentioned it down here, it's a lot more convincing is the word I come up with. When we're doing a pattern, you know, because we're stopping, especially if you're stopping at the string line or the border line, and it's a lot more convincing that you've essentially drawn this, you know, underneath the border per se, when we make sure that we get all of the little edge pieces looking nice. So that is way one to do Knightsbridge. Now, the second way is, do your lines have to be straight? Heavens no, they do not have to be straight. And I don't know that I'm gonna be able to match these up. We shall see, but I am, well, heck, why not give it a try? So sometimes, you know, because I just like to do these things, I'm going to draw the lines, but I'm going to have them be a little bit wonky. I'm just going to have them travel. I'm not worrying about, I'm just going to try to keep them relatively, yeah, like I said, in line. Like that. And then over here, just kind of making it up there. Alright, then, let's see, so, actually, well, here we go. So if you like doing this kind of thing too, so here's the natural line, so I'm going to start it there. And then from there you just kind of measure. Well, oh, I see that. Okay, this one would be here about. And like I said, I'm not making them straight on purpose. Sometimes you have to just take a minute and think a little bit. Well, let me start from this end, because I feel like I don't like what I did. But when we get to the end, we will figure it out. Okay, so there we have it. And then, same idea, and actually, alright, boy, I wish I was doing this live, and we could take a vote. Should I continue the squares the way they are, or not continue the squares where they are? Should I make them, these ones, white, or should I continue the black? I think I'm going to do them opposite. So, or as much as possible here. So I'm going to start down here, and just for right now, I'm going to continue with my 01, and I'm going to color in that string line. But that just gets me started. I'm going to flip to the 08 here, just for the coloring in purposes. Now, I don't know that if I distracted myself or not when I was saying this. If I'm repeating myself, apologize, but I'm going to repeat it anyway, just in case, because I don't remember now, because I know there's a couple places as I was talking, I was distracting myself. Gosh, and I think, whoa, do I do the alt, because that would be that one, right? And then, right. Sometimes when you go a little fancy like this, then it, ooh, because that, see, and then here, well, you know what? It'll end up how it ends up. I'm going to continue going on this straight line, because what I've had happen before is, you know, kind of go, and I'm just calling it fancy. You go fancy like this, and then somewhere do something where it doesn't line up right, where I end up, having to have like one big block instead of, having them be somewhat square and alternated. So, as I was about to say, with course corrections, if we're not liking the way something ended up, one of the best course corrections is at the point of coloring things in. There's a lot of other tangles where we color in behind, or in between, like poke root is one, printemps is another one, where we color in the little extra spaces. And even here, if if I don't really like how I bent something, now you can only make it bigger, right? We can't make it smaller, the section, so I can't expand this out. But if I'm not liking the way something happened, I can just expand it out ever so gently with coloring in. And if you're a seasoned tangler, you know, and for those that are not seasoned tanglers, you will get to know this, that in the end, it doesn't matter. It's going to look gorgeous. It doesn't matter at all. Doing Knightsbridge this way is fun. I have done some classes with some at some senior places, and do something with a straight line, and and at least one, if not more, are like, well, I can't draw a straight line, my hands are shaky. And it's like, well, you know what? That is okay. It doesn't matter. Whatever we do ends up gorgeous anyway. And it adds to the character of it. And it's one of those things, it is, as long as we work towards being consistent, and I think that is the biggest thing, is working slow and working towards some consistency, that really, really helps. But I think that's one of the hardest things with Zentangle. One of the hardest things that I have found in teaching classes is having everyone accept the fact that you might think it's not going to look good from, right from where you're starting, and I can't tell you how many people that would want to throw theirs away. Oh, let me just start over. And it's like, nope, it's okay. And also, just a reminder, as I'm reminding myself, turn your tile every so often when, just to keep your hand nice and in a nice comfortable place. And then also sometimes it's easier to see. So like I'm drawing this way, and this pen that I'm using, the 01, I don't know if it's just old or the nib is bent on it a little bit, but if I push, seems like if I'm pushing too hard is when I'm getting this like double line, and that's what I had there. And I was like, well, I want to make sure to color that in with this, but I couldn't see it because the pen was in the way. So that's another reason to move your tile. And then all of a sudden, okay, I've jumped up here, I have missed this, and for a second I had a little panic that I've gotten out of sync with doing every other one, because that kind of wrecks it. And I do apologize for this camera bouncing a little bit. I'm going to have to work at a little bit different setup, I think. Bum, bum, and every other one. See, and this is also nice because it's kind of on the a lot of Zen people within the Zentangle community are, oh, don't say the D word, don't say it's a doodle. I like to call it structure doodling because I can't change what people think, and I am not in the business of correcting people, especially because it is what it looks like. But this is nice because you kind of get the best of both of those worlds, where doodling is more of a mindless activity. You're on the phone or you're whatever, and you're just scribbling on a piece of paper, or I think we all have our things that we do with whatever paper we have handy. But this is on purpose. On purpose we drew a grid, and on purpose are coloring in every other square. And this one on purpose made the lines, while somewhat square, and then you can do anything. And the next two will be are a little bit more fun and more sweeping. But it's just fun. The only challenge with this is it does take time, as we're coloring things in, but at the same time with that, this is what Zentangle is. It's spending time so that way we can just kind of escape for a little bit, throw ourselves into this. And actually I think this one I'm going to pull this down just a little bit just because I want to. And so when we're finished here, I will show you some of what we did in the online Tangle Time class. And I will also put some links, so if you have just found me willy-nilly from maybe some kind of a search or something, I will put some links in the conversation. Actually, as I'm learning, the YouTube channel stuff, but I will put some links in there so that way then you can find me. For the most part, I put my classes, I start them off on eventbrite.com, and then I have them post right to my Facebook page. But those are the two main sources that I've been utilizing. Okay, I think I got one little teeny section here, and I was concerned. Now see, had I would have ended up with well, up here is a little bit different. And I'm going to assume that that's going to fill in right there. So in my mind, early when I started this section, and I was like, oh, and then I decided to do to just continue the grid this direction, you know, just doing every other one, because what I was worried about is having just having it not work out right where it's every other one. And so when I was first looking, I'm like, okay, I was thinking, okay, black, 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 and then I was picturing here, and I'm like, oh no, that's going to cover. But by doing following the pattern, just going every other one, it ended up how I wanted it to. And if I had gone in the other way, I would have wrecked it. So, well, wrecked it in the sense of it wouldn't have turned out the way I was envisioning it from the start. Okay, so these next two sections, let's see. Oh, we'll do it straight this way. So I had seen this, and I am not an artist. So this is coming from a non-artist. My mother, who introduced me to this, she is an artist, and we have interesting conversations. And and even when I tell people, they're like, "Oh, but you do such beautiful work." Yes, but I'm good at following instructions, and that is what Zentangle is. So I've seen, I see these really neat things, and what's fun about Zentangle is because we know the rules and we know the steps to doing these, then now looking at what somebody else has done, I started to be able to look at what they did and figure out how they did it. So I had seen this, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so cool, where it looks like as if it's fabric gathered at one point and gets bigger, it's smaller at the top and bigger at the end. So we're gonna play with these next two. We're gonna do the same. We're gonna do that. So I'm gonna start. Yeah. So they say these ones will be a little bit different. So this one will start in the middle, and this one I'm gonna do straight lines. So I'm starting from the center. So this is gonna be the smallest point up here. So when you're doing this, you have to decide, well, where do you want your smallest point? Where do you want your biggest point? But I'm just gonna do it from here, and then if you've done the Tangle paradox, that kind of helps with this. So we're just going to draw some straight lines. We're going to draw our grid, but our grid is going to be different. So I'm starting at this point, and then I'm going to draw a straight line, but just, ever increasing in distance from the line previous to it. So kind of like that. Kind of like a big long triangle. And I am coming from the same point here, and I'm trying to keep the distance similar. And now here, because I'm not going to draw over this, I'm going to do what we call, for those that are not familiar, the Hollabal Technique, where we're drawing behind. So here's where my line would be. I'd be kind of coming out here, and then I put my pen down right in this space, and then continue it. Now I'm going to flip this around the other way, do the same thing. Again, working to keep a similar distance, but if and having the comfort that if I don't, it is still okay. And then here, kind of the same thing. I'm gonna go, and then okay, that's gonna end up about there. So as you can see already, it looks, we've given it some depth. Where you consider 1D, one dimension being a flat piece of paper, we're working to create almost 2 dimensions. So this looks like a road that's extending this way. Now I'm going to do the other side of the grid. I'm going to do it a little bit curved. So basically drawing, if we're talking elemental strokes, this would be like a C. So I'm going to start towards the top here, and then I'm still going to work towards having these be squares versus rectangles. I'm going to go for more square, less rectangle if possible. These are right now are kind of rectangle-y. I found that kind of helps in being able to have these sections spread out. So we're gonna start tight together, and then we're gonna come further apart as we go. But if you maintain the idea of a square throughout, it'll naturally expand for you. Because with each section here getting bigger, making it a square. And I look at my pen and just say, okay, if I want to draw a line here, oh yeah, that'll make it square. And I do work to have this be like one continuous line and no, that's not going to work. sometimes I like to draw, you know, if I'm doing a curved line, I like to draw it this way, but in this case, that's why I tried it for a second, I do like to be able to see where I'm, this is essentially an aura. I'm auraing this curve, you know, again and again and again, and it's helpful to actually be able to see the curve, because if I flip it this way, my hand is in the way and it makes it hard to see. And saying that, you know, we're all different, so, you know, feel free, of course, to try, and I'm just gonna hug that that borderline. That was quite convenient there. And then that's it. Then, same idea. Now here's where, so I work towards having, you know, straight lines and not adding anything necessarily in, because this is where I have run into the problem, like I mentioned over here, where, you know, not going every other one caused some issue, where, like, when I got to the top, because I added something like an afterthought in, and that caused, you know, when I got to the tip, for me to have to figure out what I was going to do. So now, so then, yeah, then the big decision is where, okay, so I think we'll go ahead and start here with coloring in. And as I'm sitting here thinking, oh, y'all are just gonna be bored to tears. Oh, see, like here, at one point in time, I would have been tempted to divide that, because, oh, look at how wide. And it's like, no, just avoid the temptation. Go with the flow of it. Again, it's, you know, art imitates life in this, and nothing is bad here. As my mom says, it's only a piece of paper, Heather. It's only a piece of paper. But other people are like me and no, unfortunately, it's a little bit more than a piece of paper. But just trust. You know, this is a like kind of like trust the process, trust the pattern, and just working every other one. And so, like this one, I'm not going to do. A lot of times, I'll save these, you know, little partial exterior places that are, like I said, that are partial like this. I'll save them till afterwards, because I want to get a nice line. I could have started in the, you know, anywhere in the middle, going every other one. But I decided to kind of do it towards the bottom here and work my way up. And what I was going to say is, it's like, I keep, part of my brain is going, everyone watching, they're just going to be bored to tears here. But my hope is that you are tangling along with me, or feel free to fast forward or jump ahead to the end result. And do leave me some notes in the comment section, because I would, you know, would love to hear your thoughts, and just because I want to make sure to be bringing value to my tangling friends. Or I should say, any comments except for the shaking of the camera, because I already know about that. I thought about recording some of the Tangle Time classes, but then I worry about, you know, privacy, because I do like to have everyone get on at the end. Although, you know, I suppose I could edit it, but it just adds something that I just don't want to have to worry about. If I decide to do that, I think what I'll do is I will promote it that this will be a recorded session ahead of time, and that way those hiding in underground bunkers somewhere can continue to then they know they've been made aware. And if you also are like me and a non-artist, this just, yeah, it's like every time anytime I tangle, sometimes you have to wait and look at it. In fact, a lot of times I will, especially if I'm not liking what my hand is doing, I will turn the tile over, maybe go walk away for a minute. Just don't look at it for a few minutes. And amazingly, you go back and you're like, whoa, is that mine? Did I really do that? And I think because we, as we're tangling, our eyes, our mind, our everything is zoomed in on what we're doing. So much so that, we can see it's just, like looking through a microscope, right? And you can see every little thing. And sometimes once you just step away from it, and oh gosh, here is another mirror to life, right? You have a problem, or if you've ever lost something, and sometimes it's like, I'm going to stop looking for it for a minute, and boom, there it is. Or you have some kind of a problem you're working on or trying to figure out, and sometimes it is just a really good idea to step away for a minute, clear your mind, and look at whatever it is with a new set of eyes. And it's so interesting to have that happen with Zentangle. And I have found myself, and I should do some blog posts just for my own self, because it's interesting, and then to find out if other people have had similar experiences. But I find, and going right with starting this YouTube channel, being that, there's no mistakes, it's just getting out there and trying something, or like I was just saying, just stepping away for a minute, looking at the problem differently. I find that just in regular life, my brain will come back to something in Zentangle, especially when I'm practicing, practicing meaning just tangling. As I'm, if I'm doing more tangling regularly, then the kind of the life lessons are more like kind of ever present in my mind. And even starting this YouTube channel, I was on, we were on a call, and as we were tangling, and I was, mentioning, I think it had to do with the reason that we start off with the four corners in pencil lightly, and then do a border, and then do a string. It gets you working on the paper versus having just a blank sheet of paper, because that can be overwhelming to some of us. Some the more artsy types are, like woohoo, but for some of us it can cause a considerable amount of anxiety. And while yes, it is just a piece of paper and it's just a pen, at the same time there is just this little pressure that I'm going to come back this way. I have this little bit over here I'm going to wait to do, but it is interesting. And so I just remember thinking, you know what, I'm just going to do it. And I did. And, if we, sit in fear or hesitation or waiting for things to be perfect, then a lot of times then nothing ends up happening. And while, yes, it's good to think things through, and it just, of course, depends on the situation. I'm going to have to move to my littler pen. But yeah, sometimes it's just like, okay, I'm just going to do it, and I'm going to make the video, and I'm going to post it, and we're just going to see what happens. Worst comes to worst, nobody looks at it. And while I am, yes, sitting here talking to myself, essentially, I'm picturing people listening and maybe talking right back to me as you're tangling. Talking to yourself as well. But yeah, worst comes to worst, it doesn't get watched, and that's okay. It's a fun experiment and a fun thing to try to do, and also expands my mind, because I had to learn some extra things in order to do that. Okay, so that one, and then this one. Yeah, so some of these they are going into that next section, but that's okay. We can't help that. And then let's see. Okay, this, I didn't completely finish that line there. So I'm going to have this little sliver, if you can even see it. Little sliver there. Little sliver here. Oop, a little Okay, there we go. Oh, nope. Almost. I need to... I mentioned that I was going to save these end bits for afterwards. And that's also why sometimes it's good to, you know, start in an area and finish it and keep going whatever direction, because I know when I don't do that, it's oh goodness. Look, and I forgot that. I think that this video is going to end up being longer than the first one, just because I decided to do these 4 different ways to do Knightsbridge. And I hope that you are enjoying and that you are tangling along. And if you do, I will put my to find a good way to have y'all be able to share what you do with me, because I would love to see it. And you know, and if you're willing, post it on you know, my social media as well. But I will have those links there. All right, so next one, in the similar vein as to what we did here, we're going to kind of combine, you know, this with this, and where you can have your lines be curvy. Ooh, that's way curvy. Oops, let's go back over that. See how that's doing a double line. And this one, I think, will go like that. All right. You know, see, and so what's fun is when they're curvy, it's okay, and it doesn't, you know, it doesn't matter. So, for instance, as a course correction, if you you do something. Ooh, this is starting to look cool. Look at how it's like a vortex in the middle. So say you do something that you didn't really care for, or your hand slipped a little bit. That's where, like I said, you know, just the whole life lesson thing of figuring, you know, stopping for a minute, take a look, assess, and then say, well, let me just continue that. Or, you know, what else can I do? And that is such a life skill that is needed. It's needed, period, but it seems like ever so much more today. And it's something that we need to make sure to, you know, share with the little kiddos. Because, you know, we put so much pressure on ourselves. And that's what's interesting, especially teaching live classes, because then you can really see, okay, starting here, okay, and then here, going every other one, just remembering. What has always been interesting, and actually this one I'm gonna, oh, let's see, no, I have to curve it out. I'm gonna go straight for a minute, and then we'll see if I want to curve that. Can't curve it in because that won't work. As I was saying, we are also hard on ourselves always. We think that everything has to be perfect. You know, we've kind of been somewhat programmed that way from school. You know, got to get all the A's, got to do this, got to do that. Has to be perfect, has to be right. And it takes a while. I've noticed even just, you know, in a given class, like when I teach Zentangle Essentials, which is my introductory class. And it's interesting. I'm going to go right here. And see how this is this is where my pen decided it was going to do a double line. And so this is what's so nice, right? Is that, oh, I get to go over that and not have it look funny. And I can even expand it a little bit just to cover all of that nonsense. And then like here, then I can kind of go on to the other side. But what I have found interesting is sometimes the time it takes, because there is this point where maybe I say it enough, and then people start kind of believing it. Yeah, you know, everything that comes out of your hand is beautiful. It's fine. It's going to be okay. I even had some ladies that had come through another class, and they're like, I know you say, because they're like, okay, we just got to trust. We just got to trust. I know that this is what you say. And in the end, everything ends up looking so beautiful. And like I said, if not, there are ways to course correct. Lots of different ways. Coloring in is just one of them. shading would be number 2, and I'll have to do a whole class on ways to that we can course correct. I wasn't going to do that little bit until the end, but then I changed my mind. I need to go every other one. Okay, back on track. You know, doing the curvy, goofy lines, you know, is I don't know, it's just a lot of fun. And I did mention that I like to go around the perimeter, and then I'm finding myself not doing that because I'm getting a little confident here. And sometimes when we get overconfident, that's when something happens. I need to come up with a term for life lessons from Zentangle. And just so you know too, depending on where you're at with supplies, as I mentioned, I'm using an 08 right now. What I should have done before setting out to do this was find, these are by Sakura. They're the Pigma Microns. They do have pens. It's the same looking barrel, but they're called Graphic. And they have, I think, a 1, 2, and a 3. And I know on my store, I think I just have a 1. And it's thicker than this. Kind of similar to a brush pen. And then they have a couple thicker. So it's, you know, if you're going to do a lot of tangling, it is just nice to make sure to have something thicker in your toolkit, in your arsenal. But then at the same time, there is something completely therapeutic about... Actually, I'm going to go over this line here, because that was one of those that I want to course correct. There is something nice and therapeutic about, even if you're just using the, you know, the fine pen, because you certainly can. And then with that, so I'm just gonna need to mind my string line, which is right there, because we didn't, you know, we could have done those in pen, hindsight. Could have. Sometimes you can, sometimes, you know, it is nice to have that string line just disappear. Okay, my every other one. Well, this is a little thin one here. And alternating, and then being careful too, especially the way I'm doing this. I want to make sure not, because I want to make sure not to get into that little triangle, because that's part of the other section there. Okay, now this is a section. I think I'm gonna have to move to, well, maybe I don't. And yep. The top here I just had 3. So there we go. How cool is that? Essentially, well, it's kind of 2 different ways and then 2 themes on those variations. Now, if you're going to shade, one thing about shading is, depending on what you're using, if you're using a traditional Zentangle tile, and, you know, and if you're using colors like we have the tan and the gray, that's really cool, because you can even go use a white charcoal and do the white, and oh my gosh, does it look spectacular. You could use a different color instead of black. The options are yours. But what I'm going to do, oh, and where I was going with that is, we have to be aware of how far can we move our graphite. I was like, do I have anything on the back side of this? Oh, I did. Well, yeah. Okay, so ignore my practice sessions. This is something that I like to do, and I'll do it here, because this is just cardstock. Sometimes when I'm playing around, I just like to use cardstock. Every piece of paper is going to be a little bit different when it comes to the shading, and forgive the The shaking of the camera. And as you can see, I'm still having a line here. So I need to go lighter with, and I have to actually, so this is going to shake and I apologize. I have to go a little bit harder because I'm still getting that line. Personally, when I'm doing shading, I'm aiming to create a nice gradient. So if I go a little bit lighter, you know, and sometimes you're not going to necessarily avoid it. Now see, I went a little bit lighter and it was easier to blend that, so you don't really see that harsh line. Now, sometimes you might want somewhat of a harsh line, because what I'm going to do, I want contrast. And that, for Zentangle, that's what we aim for in general, is the contrast. So for this one, I'm gonna follow the string lines. And yeah, this is black and white, so of course you can lift up. Again, I'm so sorry for the shaking here. I'm gonna figure something out on that. Let's see. Let me just do one side here first. So I put graphite on the string line, and a lot of times what I do, now I'm thinking about it. Yeah, I'm gonna try this. Is I work to not have graphite, say, above. So let's pretend I don't want graphite up here, because I can come back and change that. And even with the cardstock, where you're colored in is where it's a little bit wet. Oh, I put graphite into the other section, so that's not going to work so much, what I was thinking. But you can kind of see how this side now is kind of curving down. So when we think of shading, where we put graphite where it's dark, it sinks down. So as I mentioned before, we have one dimension with just that this is paper. We're working to create 2 dimensions. Heck, almost, well, maybe not 3, but still, because all of this, you know, with these 2 sections kind of going in, we can create what looks like a portal. But my initial intention was I'm gonna smudge it on both sides, and then I might come back, I probably will, and make it even darker in the center. And then I'm going to follow this one. Like I said, and this is something, you know, I'll say hindsight, I could have played with a little bit more. But this is I think this is like playtime. And but you can play with maybe not having it go into one section and just having it go into another. Maybe I'll try that over here. That way you can see what I'm talking about. But because I'm kind of going into both, the darker is of course on this line, and yeah, and like I said, because this is cardstock, it's hard to get that pencil line out, but it does spread fairly nice. Also, always make sure, let's see, okay, I'm going to put graphite on this side. I'm going to try to leave this side open. And then I'll, you know, the beauty of it is you can always come back and I can add it and put it on the other side. But I want to kind of demonstrate this. Even though this is not a class on shading, every time I do something, there is something about shading, because we generally shade everything. Okay. So with the tortillon, I am making my little circles, but I'm not going into this section. I'm taking the pencil, the graphite, and I'm bringing it down into this section only. And what's interesting is that this then ends up oddly, oops, and here's my other side. And same thing, and I have the point of the tortillon going towards the line of the graphite. And it's just one of those, it just helps with control. And of course you don't have to do this over the black, because it's dark already and it's not going to matter. I do, like, you know, I will go into the sides because I don't want it to, personally don't want it to look like, oh, I've stopped here, because naturally, you know, if I stop here, then like this line would kind of, you know, taper in. I do want it to look like as if I had gone. Okay, so looking at that, oh my gosh, maybe I'm just going to leave it that way. So it's like this looks like the floor, and then these sides are kind of coming in. Can even just add some more graphite. Sometimes, you know, I'm just going to do a little circle of it there. and then, you know, draw it out just a little bit more. Because what we're, like I said, what we're aiming for with this is we're aiming for contrast. And the contrast being, like, these sections are kind of curved. This, you know, still same thing, there's folded in. But down here, this one looks flat because I didn't bring any graphite into this section of the pattern. So, and then as always, you want to make sure at the end, I said this is going to be, definitely that's going to be my up and down. We always like to finish up with just putting your initials or a chop, something, because it's artwork. And even though, look at the beautiful art that we did with just one tangle. So like I said, I will put something in the comment section so that way you can share, because I would love to see what you have done. And also look forward to any comments that you might have as far as how you like what I'm doing, and if you have any suggestions for something that you'd like to see. So thanks so much, and then look for the next video, which will be the other half of this last Tangle Time, which is echoism, is the one that we did. And I will, in that video, I will share some of the results of the Tangle Time online class that we did. So thanks so much for tangling with me, and I hope you had a great time, and we will talk to you again soon. Have a good one.